Sure. Good morning and hello, everybody from Malaysia. Thank you very much for being here. We are overwhelmed by the number of people are joining here. So we already have over 500 registered participants. As you know, the Zoom can only hold up until 300. So we are going live on YouTube as well. So if your colleagues, your friends who couldn't able to join, please direct them to the YouTube. So I think my colleague will post the link very soon on the chat box. First of all, welcome again to this workshop. Today we are focusing on how to publish in top-tier journals, a social science perspective. We have two distinguished speakers for this session, and I am thrilled to welcome you, everybody. My name is Dr. Rupam. I'm from School of Hospitality, Tourism and Events at Taylor's University. Again, welcome everybody. People are joining in. You can see over already 126 participants here. So before we start, I just like to describe the flow of this particular workshop. First of all, we'll introduce the speakers, followed by the speakers will talk about their own perspective. They'll do the presentation, and then I will take the questions and then deliver to them. So keep your questions for the end. You can put your questions in the chat box. We will follow up and try to ask those questions with a limited time. Definitely, the session will end at 11:30 in Malaysian time. So without further ado, I will introduce the speaker. The first speaker for this session is none other than Prof. Fevzi Okumus. He is a well-known professor. Everybody's known, and he is a distinguished professor at the University of Central University of Rosen College, and as well as Central Florida. He is a founding chair for Hospitality Service Department at University of Central Florida, Rosen College. He is an academic who has published over 260 publications in referred journal, book chapters, presentations, or and many of the conferences he has attended. He is well known all over the world. He has also chaired and co-chaired numerous PhD dissertations, master theses, and more importantly, he is the editor-in-chief for the well-known journal, which is under the Q1 journal, International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, which has an impact factor of 5.66. And also he is overseeing another journal, which is Journal of Hospitality Tourism Insight. So you're welcome to publish there. Definitely, your good articles and so on. He is also a frequent speaker at many international conferences. He has also served and received many awards. And more importantly, he was ranked 73rd in 2018. He also received an award, and also he is a well-known scholar out of the top 2% in the sport, leisure and tourism field globally, according to the published study in 2020. So of course, he is a well-known. Our next speaker is none other than Associate Professor Dr. Mustafa Rasulamanis. He's an associate professor as well as the director for the Center for Research in Innovation in Tourism. He's also the head of research in the Faculty of Social Science and Research Management. His research has focused mainly on sustainable tourism, heritage tourism, urban sustainability, and quantitative advanced data analysis. If you are in this area, I'm sure you have read some of his published articles. He has published over 100 papers in these areas, as well as he has published in the more top-tier journals, namely Tourism Management, Journal of Travel Research, and Journal of Sustainable Tourism, and so on. He is also served as associate editor for the Journal of Hospitality Tourism Management. He is also the special issue editor for the Journal of Hospitality Tourism Technology. He's in the number of editorial board in quite well-known journals, and he is also in the editorial member board of the several reputed journal, SSCI mainly. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Prof. Fevzi to start his talk, and then we will follow it up with the question and answer session. So Prof. Fevzi, over to you. I will stop sharing my screen here.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. First of all, I would like to thank Taylor's University, particularly my good friend Mustafa, for inviting me to join him this workshop. Mustafa and myself and Dr. Shiva Jahani, we have been working on a research methods textbook for the last, I think, 15 months. And we have been meeting frequently through Zoom or WhatsApp, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Orlando time and 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Malaysia time. So, and then I got to know him well, and I have full great respect for him. He's a great scholar and a good friend. So basically, how to publish in top-tier journals. I have spoken about this topic many times, but I like to emphasize before we start, yes, publishing in top-tier journals is very important for us, for our career, for many reasons. But before we start, I think the key here is, Mustafa, it's not allowing me to, okay, now it's working, all right. Sorry. Yeah. The key for us is to think how we can become a good researcher, all right? Not just publishing in top-tier journals, but the key question should be, how can I become a good researcher, okay? If you have this question in mind, I'm sure gradually you can publish in top-tier journals. Myself, I am originally from Turkey. English was not my first language. And when I started my master's and my PhD, my dream was to publish in English in an SSCI journal. I never thought about I will publish over 160 journal articles. I will become an editor of a journal, SSCI journal. Forget about it. I was not able to even read in English or write in English properly. So if you try, work hard to become a good researcher, I think things will follow. And then before we start this presentation, I can easily say, among all this group, you mentioned around 500 people have registered. Among all these groups, I am perhaps the only one who has received the most rejections from journals. If I get one acceptance, I get 5 rejections, still I do, or, okay? So this is part of life, and I'm a better researcher than last year, but I will be a better researcher next year than this year. So this is a journey. So this is the outline, what we have with Mustafa to cover today. Again, these are based on our views, experience. You can add other items, and also we can talk about each item for an hour. So for the sake of time, I will be fast. And then shamelessly, I need to mention the 2 journals that I've been editing. I'm the second editor of IJCHM. I took over IJCHM in 2007. Okay. Basically, we publish anything about management of hospitality and tourism organizations. That's the focus. In 2020, IJCHM received over 1,500 submissions. You're talking about 5 submissions per day, and some submissions go through twice or 3 times. So it's like a factory, a lot of work. As of today, we received 617 submissions. So you can imagine 2021 has been busy as well. We publish around 200 articles, 12 issues per year. So downloads are over 700 downloads. We have 700,000 downloads. Our impact factor, our moderator mentioned, 5.667. I think next month or in July, we will have the next impact factor. I'm expecting around 7 this year, which should be higher than this. Site score is 7.2, looks good. We are very fast. In 6 weeks, we come back. Our desk rejections about 30–40%. We are famous, notorious for having 5 reviewers, 4 reviewers for each paper. Okay, and I'm happy about it, because if you have only 2 reviewers, which is not that good, so we get really detailed feedback, and also we grade, we review, we look at reviewers' performance. If someone is always rejecting, if someone is giving only brief comments, we don't invite that person. And also, if that person is on the editorial board, gradually we say bye-bye to that person. Okay. So here you see my A team, senior editorial board. We have about 130 people on the editorial board, but these are the individuals I work very closely. If I have split decision or if I need their help and so forth. What happened in 2017, because IJCHM was so successful, and then the publisher asked whether we would consider having another baby, a journal, so we could channel submissions to IJCHM that were rejected. We said, why not? And we submitted a detailed 30-page proposal. Basically, at that stage, Professor Dr. Matilda van Niekerk was my managing editor of IJCHM. She was my good friend, best friend, and she took the lead. We worked together. We were co-founding editors. Unfortunately, Matilda passed away in 2019 due to cancer. And my goal was to give this journal to her at one point. And after she passed away, I took ownership, and I'm sure if she's watching this presentation, and if her soul is with us, she's looking at and giving me instructions to do what to do, how to do. She was very professional, very skillful. But I will say JHTI has been incredibly successful. Last year, we received 246 submissions. And so far this year, we received 114 submissions. I expect around 300 submissions this year. And it is already in the Scopus index and emerging citation index. I expect this journal to be an SSCI, I think, very soon, within 1 or 2 years. And I will say, if we publish tourism papers here as well. So it is for PhD students, junior researchers, this is a great outlet if you get rejections from other journals. But our rejection rate is also getting very high. Acceptance rate is about 20%. So for the sake of time, what I will say, magic points for publication. I think if you don't like reading, writing, getting criticized, you are in the wrong field. Okay, so you have to be passionate about research and learning. And also, there is no shortcuts. It's hard work, and you have to have a positive attitude. I see many researchers, after they get 1 or 2 rejections, after they read reviewers, editors' comments, they lose their passion. They become very negative. So it's a difficult journey, and you have to keep reading, writing, practicing, and rejections are part of this life. Okay, as I mentioned, I received more rejections perhaps than anyone else, but with each paper I learn new things. And then time management, basically you have to manage your time, devote time for research, and your family members should understand, research is part of your life. That is the energy you have, that is the purpose you have, and you have to be patient. I remember years ago, you may know Professor Perry Hobson. He used to work at Taylor's University, and we have affiliation with Oxford Brookes University. He graduated from Oxford Brookes University years ago. When I was a PhD student, I asked him a dumb, stupid question. I still laugh about it, laugh at myself. I said, Perry, how can I be famous? How many papers I need to publish? Okay. And I'm still laughing about it. And he said, Fevzi, Albert Einstein published just 1 paper, okay, 1 research to become famous. And being famous is not that a big deal. It's all about the impact, okay? So you have to be patient, keep learning and moving and so forth. So why should we publish? It's just, it's career, getting a job, getting promotions, getting grants, and you're supporting your institution and showing that you know something, you are contributing to the field, to the industry, and to education. So it's all about contribution, making a positive impact. And I love when I work with the industry, when I get a letter, email from someone I don't know saying, I read your book, I read your article, wow, it solved my problem. And I laugh, I say, wow, this is good, at least they are reading, okay? So making an impact is the key here. So this is a funny slide. I must give Matilda credit, I'm still using that. She designed this. So why should we publish? It's all about getting a job, promotion, income, and recognition. And I will say ego as well. Most of academics, we have big egos. We love seeing our names in print. I see people putting on their social media, I published this paper, my citations are this, and I'm ranked this and that. All of us have, I think I would say, some ego and see our rankings and names in published. But people ask me, including my wife, God bless them, my parents, they passed away recently, both of them. They asked me, like, why you are still working, still writing, still working? I'm already a professor. I say, this is my hobby. You know, I don't play golf. I don't have many hobbies apart from walking, exercising, and traveling. Because of COVID, I couldn't travel. But research is my hobby. Teaching, speaking, they are my hobbies. And I'm curious about things, okay? Especially research, solving problems. And in recent years, I work with the hospitality industry, with companies in Orlando or globally. And when I help them with their problems, I feel good. And when I learn about their issues, it's a great feeling. So why should we publish? Is developing a new theory, creating new knowledge, and also stimulating, suggesting future research. Basically, this is the base of research, why we do. And then offer solutions, solve problems, help industry partners, recommend best practices. I think these are applied research, working with the industry. I will tell you, if you are a researcher, if you publish something, you must use it in your classroom, okay? In your PhD class, in your master's class, undergraduate class, or if a seminar, if you're not using your research in your teaching, with your contacts with the industry, your research has no meaning, right? And then again, research is all about enhancing academic programs, how you teach better, how you improve your degree program, how you improve your university's overall ranking. So this is all about research, okay? And I give the floor to Professor Mustafa. Mustafa, have I missed anything during the first session you can add? And I'm sure you are a better speaker than me, and I hand over
Not at
to
all.
you. Thank you. Yes.
Not at all. Thank you very much, Professor Fevzi Okumus, and good morning, good evening, everyone. I can see some familiar faces, familiar names actually here. So we have participants from different countries. Really, today I'm happy to share a stage with Prof. Okumus. It's an honor for me to speak with Prof. Okumus. Actually, I'm presenting to him to correct my mistake because I'm his student. So I really appreciate him to allow me to share this with him. Prof, please, anytime I'm going through different parts, anything that you think should be added, and any comment or any improvement in my presentation, please come in and add. I'm sure this will improve the flow
Mustafa,
and the presentation.
I have one straightforward correction. When I look at scholars globally, you are one of the stars and highly established, especially in quantitative research. You are very impressive, and you are not anymore a rising star, you're a star already. And I really enjoy working with you, and our 2 books coming, research methodology books, will be, I think, one of the best sellers. Yes, we won't make any money, but at least that will make a huge contribution. You don't need to be that humble. You are impressive, and I enjoy working with you.
It's reality. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will take over here from Prof. Fevzi to discuss a bit about how prepare our paper to be publishable in a top-tier journal. Actually, we need to consider some criteria to improve quality of our paper to be considered and be publishable in good journals. But one point before starting the structure of paper is where a good paper, good quality paper comes from. Actually, a good quality paper comes from a good quality research. Without doing a good research, actually, we cannot prepare a good paper. So paper cannot come from air. First, we need to be a good researcher. We need to conduct a good research with the different component of research. And then we can transfer the result of good research to a good paper. But of course, we need to consider something that for this transition, how we can convert result of a good research to a good paper. So this is first, and I think the most important things that always we need to keep in our mind, that paper comes from a good research. Okay, so when we conduct a good research, how we can transfer to a good paper? You can see here the structure of paper. So this is almost similar for all journals and papers that we prepare, regardless of methodology that we apply or content of paper. So we need to have a good title, a good abstract, introduction, literature review, methodology, result and finding, discussion, conclusion, and limitation of study. So this is a structure of paper, the structure of a good paper. So if you look at the papers published in different journals, you can see with some maybe differences, you can see this structure for published paper. But what we need to consider for each part. For title, okay, our title of paper should have some characteristic. Title should represent your research, should be attractive and eye-catching. When later Prof. Fevzi can add to this, because he's an established editor and review for many of journals. When you submit your paper, of course, the first thing, not all, but the first thing that editor and reviewer look at for your paper to see the quality of your paper is attractiveness of your title. Is not only to understand your paper, especially from editor perspective, a good title later can attract good citation. So from these two perspectives, representing work, be attractive, and later can attract citation, title can be important. There are some limitations for some journals. For example, when you submit, there are some journals that say, okay, your title should be 8 words, 12 words. For some journal, there are some limitations, but for some other journal, there is no limitation. But still, you need to think about your title, how your title can be attractive and at the same time can represent your research. Many times I receive a comment from reviewer that, okay, the content of your work is good, but your title is not representing your paper. You need to add something, you need to delete something, you need to modify and revise your title to represent. So at the same time, you need to look at these two criteria, representativeness and attractiveness. Okay.
And also
Then,
short.
yes.
And also short, not
Yeah.
long titles. Thank you.
Yeah. Short. Yeah, the title should be short and at the same time attractive. So no need to put all the content of your work, factor influencing on blah 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 blah, and you write 2 lines, 3 lines title. But sometimes we cannot avoid this. Recently, we had a paper published with the IJCHM for combining partial least squares and FSQCA. So this paper is hot from oven. Yesterday, 2 days ago, published in IJCHM, Contemporary Hospitality Management. But the topic is long, I know, but we didn't have choice because we need to put these 2 main components in our title. But it's better to keep short and attractive. For abstract, second part, and after title, actually, this is one of the most important part that editor and the reviewer look at this part at the beginning and first. And sometime, not always, but sometime they can make decision based on your abstract. They go through other part, but abstract should be very informative and concise. So for abstract, to have a good abstract, it's good to start with your research objective, right? So what's your research objective for this research? What you want to do in this research, very briefly. And then explain your method. Right? If you look at Emerald structured abstract, you can see different main component and necessary component of abstract. In Emerald structured abstract, you can see purpose, right? So some parts are compulsory: purpose, method and design, finding, and value, original value of your research. Also, there are some other parts like the practical implication, theoretical implication, but it's not compulsory for structured abstract. Actually, this 4 component is here. So in abstract, you have to consider these 4 main components and be very clear about these 4. A research objective, so this is equal to purpose in a structured abstract. Explain study area, sampling, analysis, so this is your method and design. Report key finding, okay, what did you find in your research, in your paper? So you have to report key finding in your abstract, and at the end, you have to explain in abstract what's your contribution and originality of your work. So this compulsory part of a structured abstract in Emerald, but other publisher don't have this structured abstract. You can write in plain way your abstract, but you have to consider these main components. So don't forget to explain about originality and contribution and significance of your work in abstract. So this is after title, this is next part that editor and reviewer decide about your paper, right? So it's very important here to highlight your contribution. Next part of paper is introduction. Probably is the next and last part that an editor decide about your paper and sending out your paper for review, and a reviewer make decision, maybe 90%, 95% of decision after reading introduction. Prof. Fevzi, if I'm wrong, please correct me. So introduction is very important. It's not all, but it's very important to sell your paper. So selling point of your paper after abstract is introduction. So in introduction, which flow we have to follow in our introduction? Of course, in introduction, always we start very brief background of, but background related to our topic. But this background is useful to highlight and identify and explain problem and gap. So you have to start with background, but background, what's the purpose of background? To link and to highlight your problem statement. So your introduction should start with very, very briefly explaining about your background. Then based on this background, okay, if you are talking about tourist experience, right? If you are talking about green product, if you are talking about adoption of green technology, right? This is your brief. But what's the problem? What's the gap about adoption of green technology? There are many, many previous studies. What the gap that you want to fill, you want to address in your research. So based on background, you can go to problem statement and gap. So this is very important. When I read an introduction to review a paper, right? I'm reviewing over 100 papers per year from different journals, right? So when I read a paper, first after abstract, I look at introduction. What's the problem? What's the gap that this study aims to fill? If you cannot highlight the gap related to green technology adoption, so you cannot sell your work, right? So in introduction, after brief background, you have to go to problem and gap and highlight problem and gap. And then based on problem and gap, okay, for this problem and gap, this is my objective. So you can highlight your research question and research objective. So based on this gap, this is my research question that I plan to answer to in this research. This is my research objective that I plan to address in my research. So without a clear gap, it's not possible to identify clearly your research objective, right? So you can go to research objective. Of course, to address research objective, you can provide the summary of some key theories or variables or concept that you are planning to use, you are planning to apply in your research, but is not compulsory, similar to previous part. And next important part is, again, here we need to identify, we need to highlight, we need to emphasize significance of your study. Okay, so if this is gap, if this is problem, and our research objective is to address this problem, oh, what's the significance of this work? Lack of previous study on this can be a justification and can be a gap. No. Why? Because lack of study in this field, because this topic is not important. So this can be a reason, right? So far, no scholar go to investigate this topic. Okay, but because this topic is not important and has no significant contribution and outcome. So why lack of study can be a gap problem? and highlight significance of your work. So after that, you have to explain, okay, if I answer this question, if I fill this gap, this will be theoretical and practical significance of my work. Of course, in detail, you will discuss in conclusion about real theoretical contribution and the practical implication. But here in abstract, in introduction, you need to explain originality, novelty, and significance of your work. There is a very famous question, so what? You probably receive from for your paper, for rejection or review of your paper, reviewer always asks, so what? So what should be answered first in your introduction. You need to highlight significance and originality of your work, novelty of your work. And then in introduction, in conclusion, you need to explain clearly, okay, this is a theoretical contribution of my work, this is practical implication, this can be used by industry, this is addition to knowledge, right? So this is one of the key points in introduction. Another part is the brief structure of your research. You can have this part, or you can see different papers. Some papers, they provided brief structure of your paper, a brief structure of their papers, but in many of paper, maybe you cannot see this part, right? So this is not the critical part of your introduction, but the critical part is problem statement, objective, and significance of your book. I think Prof. Fevzi, you want to add something to this? Right?
Okay. Yes, Mustafa, you're doing great. For the sake of time, I think we can move forward.
Okay.
Yes, I think one question someone asked, Rania, can we have both a research question and research hypothesis? Yes, you can, but not, you cannot present your hypothesis in your introduction.
Yeah.
I would answer that. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
we will go through question later when
yes.
Dr. Rupam actually collect all questions. So at the end we can go through.
For the sake of time, I think we can go faster and then
Okay.
answer all the questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Next part of your paper is literature review. So in all papers, especially for social science, for science discipline, for medicine, for engineering, you might not see this part. And introduction can be part of, literature review can be part of introduction. But in social science paper, you need to have a critical review of literature and previous studies, right? For what? First, to understand what previous studies have done. But literature review should be directly related to your topic. And I can say should be related to your research objective and research question. Not only. Can please mute?
Yes, I have muted the.
Yeah. So literature review is reviewing of literature, but related to, directly related to your research question and research objective. But should become, what should be component of a good literature review? For different papers, for example, for quantitative and qualitative, maybe we have a different direction to write literature review. But some components are common and we need to consider when we write literature review. Some components are more important in, for example, in quantitative research. In quantitative research, theoretical framework is very critical. You need to have, addition to literature, theoretical framework and theory is different with literature. Literature, okay, is something related to previous studies. But theoretical framework is something, is an established theory, or can be more than one theory that support your research, right? So for quantitative research, this theoretical framework is a key. If I receive a quantitative paper to review, the first thing in literature review that I check, and if I cannot see this theory and theoretical framework, with the 90%, I reject this paper. Because for quantitative research, it's not possible to develop conceptual framework and conceptual model without theory. We cannot only base on empirical previous studies develop our hypothesis and conceptual framework, right? So theoretical framework is a key in quantitative research. What's the reason? Because, you know, when we follow quantitative research, actually our reasoning is deductive reasoning. In deductive reasoning, we start from theory, and based on data that we collect, we want to test, we want to confirm, we want to develop, we want to extend existing theory. So deductive reasoning, theoretical part, and theory is a starting point. So how can we develop a quantitative research without theoretical framework, without an established theory? But for inductive reasoning, for qualitative research, I know we start from data and we are supposed to develop theory at the end of our research. So for inductive reasoning, maybe we don't have theory at the beginning, because theory is not starting point for inductive research and for qualitative research, but for quantitative research is a key and very important. So for quantitative research, we need to have theoretical framework. And this theoretical framework include measurement and structural theory. Measurement means if you have a few variables, how did you develop, how did you measure these variables, right? If you have tourist experience in your work, what's the meaning of tourist experience? How you measure this tourist experience in your work? So we need measurement theory and a structural theory. A structural theory refers to relationship between variables, right? So this is for quantitative research. But for qualitative, is not, we can have parent theory, we can have a theory as an umbrella for your research, but it's not very connected to your work. But for quantitative, if you develop H1, hypothesis 1, this hypothesis 1 should be supported by theory, right? So it's very complex, very critical, the role of theory. But for qualitative, in literature review, linked to our research objective and question, we need to explain different concepts that we have, but in direct link to your research objective and question. Next part is methodology. Your method should be robust. So regressness is a critical part of your methodology, regardless of method that you apply. If you apply quantitative, you have to be rigorous and robust in your qualitative method. If you apply quantitative, you need to be rigorous for your quantitative, right? And the mixed method. So we have different criteria to assess rigorousness of quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research. For mixed method, you have to identify, for each one you need to justify, right? First, why quantitative method is suitable for your research? Why qualitative is suitable to address your research question, right? And why mixed method? And if you go for mixed method, what design of mixed method you apply? Your mixed method is exploratory sequential, is the concurrent method, how you combine qualitative and quantitative. So you need to explain very clearly justification and design of your method in your methodology part, and then a strategy to collect data. If you apply quantitative method, how did you collect your data? What's the sampling method? Who are, what's your population? Why this population? Why this sampling method? Why this sample size? Right? And for quantitative, you need to explain here measurement, right? How did you measure your variable? Also for qualitative, why you choose this study area? What's the method of sampling for qualitative? What's the population? So you need to explain in detail different part in your methodology. And then data analysis technique. What data analysis technique you use, you apply in your research? Why? Okay, if you apply PLS, right? It's my favorite technique, but you need to justify why for this quantitative research, PLS can be a good technique, a good method. If you apply covariance-based SEM, why covariance-based SEM is suitable? For qualitative, if you apply thematic analysis, why thematic analysis? Did you use software, or did you actually do analysis manually? So you need to explain what's in your interview protocol, right? For a previous part for data collection. So you need to explain different part. And if you apply mixed method, of course, you need to explain data collection for both qualitative and quantitative, right? What's the method and what's the analysis technique for quantitative and also qualitative for mixed method. For result, I think I need to speed up. For result, you need to apply recent published paper and standard and guideline to report results of your analysis and your finding. If you apply again, if you apply PLS-SCM, right? So how did you report your result? What criteria did you report? So did you use a recent guideline to report your result? So you have to report your result based on recent guideline, and you need to be very clear for reporting the result. Because actually when an editor decides to send your paper for review, one of the criterion that editor consider is methodology part. So if your paper is a quantitative paper, definitely your paper will be sent out to someone that are good in quantitative method. And if you apply a specific method, you apply SEM. So editor sent to someone that already published good number of paper using SEM. So they are good in technique and method. So they will check the way that you reported result, right? So you have to apply and use recent guideline for reporting your result. Discussion part is the next part. Some journal ask you, some editor ask you, and this is guideline of some journal that combine discussion and conclusion. But some journal actually doesn't like this combination. Some reviewers don't like this combination of discussion and conclusion. So I had this experience that I combined these two and submitted my paper to a journal, and later reviewer asked me to split these two parts. And sometimes from the beginning, I had two different sections, but a reviewer asked me to combine these two parts, right? So there are different opinion, different understanding, different way of thinking for this, but if even we combine, we need to have main component for each one. For discussion part, actually we need to have, we need to discuss all result and finding with literature. So discussion is not summary of your work. Discussion is not part that you discuss your contribution. Discussion section is to discuss your result with previous study. What's the link to previous literature? Which part of your finding actually is consistent with previous study? Which part is inconsistent and why? What's the reason for inconsistent finding with previous study? So in discussion part, you need to create a very strong link between your finding and literature, right? And conclusion part is the last part of our research, and it's very important part. We can summarize our key finding, but the key part of this conclusion is theoretical contribution, practical implication. So in this part, you need to explain clearly, okay, what's your contribution to knowledge? What did you get from your research and can be considered as a significant contribution to improve knowledge, to add something to knowledge and theory? So this is theoretical contribution of your part, and of course, practical implication. We need to provide some advice, some solution, some implication for industry, for practitioner, how they can apply our research in practice, how they can apply our research in industry. So what can be our implication for industry, and at the end, limitation and some suggestion for future research. Okay, what's the limitation of your work and what you recommend for future research? So this will be based on flow of your research. So I try to briefly explain different component and different component of a paper and what criteria we need to consider to make a good paper. Here we can see the summary of this discussion. So title, recency. So your literature should be recent literature. So you need to, if you submit a paper 2021, your references cannot be from 2010 and before and 1980, 1960. We can have some key paper, because when we explain theory, we need to refer to original paper that developed this theory or established this theory, right? But at the same time, we need to have recent publication, recent papers in our work. Relevance to current knowledge, methodology should be robust, originality of your work should be emphasized in introduction and also in conclusion. You need to communicate very clearly, so a structure of paper should be clear, flow of paper should be clear. So when a reader, reviewer read your paper, it should be easy to understand. Should be convincing. Convincing come from originality. So you need to convince reviewer and convince editor that your work is worthy to be published in this journal. And of course, you need to adhere to editorial objective and editorial instruction and scope. Okay, next part that I'm trying to cover is how to select reputed journal and predatory journal. For this part, I will go faster. And there are some way to actually identify what platform and journal I can publish my work and journal can be suitable. One of the maybe easiest way is look at your references list and see what's which journal you cited more, right? Which journal you cited most. So it means this journal is in this journal interest on your topic. So this can be a way. Always actually doesn't work, but can be a way to start when you are looking for journal. Also, there are some journal finder. Actually, I plan to show you some of these journal finder, but I think we don't have time. For some publisher, for example, for Elsevier, you can find journal finder. So if you go to journal finder for Elsevier, you can copy and paste your title and abstract. And based on title and abstract, Elsevier can suggest some journal. Springer also can do this. Also in Wiley and Taylor Francis, we have this journal suggester or journal finder. In Emerald, based on my knowledge, we don't have this journal finder and suggester, but you can use this platform to search and to find journal. But of course, when you search, wide range of journals are suggested to you, that some of them are not totally related to your topic and work, because we don't know the algorithm, but they use some keywords and search based on keywords. So you should be very mindful, and from the list that journals suggest to you, you have to pick up some most relevant to your work. Another thing that we can consider when we select a journal is indexing system and metrics and reputation of journal. You know, we have a different indexing system that at least can provide the minimum standard for quality of journal, so you can rely on their evaluation. So this can be a good way to identify reputed journal and distinguish between reputed and predatory journal. Okay, one can be actually indexed in Clarivate Analytics. Before was Thomson Reuters and Web of Science. So we have a different indexing system under Clarivate. SSCI, Social Science Citation Index, so it's common for social science journal with impact factor. SCI is for science journal. ESCI is emerging citation index, if I'm not mistaken. So this is journal with without impact factor. So, but you have to be careful about this ESCI, because we have sometimes we have some paper indexed in ESCI, but still those paper are not reliable paper. Journals are not reliable journal, and maybe it's not good to publish. Another one is Scopus. So Scopus is another indexing system. If we want to go through this different system, I think we need one separate workshop to go through these predatory and reputed journal, and this indexing system takes a long time. But just here I wanted to introduce this indexing system and some minimum criteria for assessment of quality of journal. So Scopus also is the indexing system, so you can see and you can search to find the journal under Scopus in different categories. But as I said, for ESCI, even for SSCI, it's not, you have to be mindful and think based on some other criteria for based on indexing system. Even we have some SSCI journal, but I believe those SSCI journals still are predatory journals. Why? Later I will explain, right? Recently, a paper published by Nature based on another paper published in another journal in early of 2021. And they actually identify many hundreds of journals under Scopus, but still predatory. So you cannot rely on only indexing system. Another two indexing system can be a bit more represent quality of journal is ABDC list, Australian Business Deans Council, and ABS, Association of Business Schools. So first, ABDC is popular in Australia, New Zealand, and this region, and ABS is more popular in UK and European countries. So this ABDC, we have C, B, A, and A star journal. So we actually, we have journal categorized under these 4 categories. But recently I read a report for IBDC. They are trying to come out with the A2 star. So this A double star or 2 star will be highest ranked journal and quality based on their evaluation. But in ABS, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 star. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 star. So also we can check quality of journal based on this system. Another criteria that we can check based for reputation of journal is publisher. Generally, is not always, but generally, big publisher and reputed publisher don't publish and don't support predatory journal. So this can be a criterion to consider, and also universities. So some journals that support by university, most of time we can actually trust that this journal should not be predatory. But if we search those, if we use those criteria, but still we want to know about predatory journal. For predatory journal, we need to discuss one whole session for predatory journal, but there are some way to identify. One is Bill's list, but actually this Jeffrey Bill's list was stopped in 2017. In this, because of some reason, in this list and this website, actually he provided a list of publisher and journal that can be considered predatory. But the difficulty of this part is we don't have clear definition for predatory journal, right? But still, we can check editorial board. Prof. Fevzi has a good story for this one. Later, he can tell us about this, because when we look at editorial board, sometimes editorial board are fake. So you can see good name in editorial board, but actually are not real. They put their name without their permission, right? Rigorousness of review process can be another thing to understand fake journal. Fast acceptance. You can send a paper to a journal after 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, you can get acceptance for your paper. So it means this journal that doesn't have rigorous review process, right? Some publisher actually can be identified. So you can see the list of publishing bill list as a predatory publisher. As I said, also there are some publisher that they have their own SSCI journal, but can be considered predatory. Recently, I read a paper about MDPI. Maybe most of you know MDPI, and there are many different journals under MDPI. But MDPI, one of the journals is sustainability. Prof. Fevzi mentioned about IJCHM, that publish 200 paper per year, right? And they have 1,500 submission. You can imagine this sustainability journal, how many papers they publish annually. I did an exploration and the count number of published paper only for 2020. You can imagine they publish more than 10,000 papers for 1 year. 10,000 paper published. Okay, you imagine for 10,000 paper published, how many paper they should receive? 30,000, 40,000? And who reviewed these papers? Very good journal with high reputation, struggling to attract reviewer. How a journal can attract 3 reviewer for 30,000 papers and select 10,000 paper per year? I don't know. So rigorousness of review process and fast publication can be another thing. Publication fee is something that recently highlighted. You know, for this predatory journal, there is a very good and interesting statistic for Malaysia. You know, Malaysia now is one of the top in publishing predatory journal, and we have not in social science, all disciplines, we have more than 11% of published paper in Malaysia. More than 11% are published in predatory journal. For social science, this number is very terrible, so I don't want to say. So when you shortlist the journal, you can go through aim and scope of journal, recent published papers, and taste of journal. You can check taste of journal, special issue. Taste of journal, how we can check? Some journals are interested to quantitative, some journals are interested in qualitative, mixed method, and some journals actually accept the both and the different methodology. But when we have experience or when we work with some colleague, we can get taste of journal. And the last part is submission process. Very briefly, when you prepare your paper, you have to go through submission process. There are different submission process and platform for journal. Most of publishers use Scholar One manuscripts, Sage, Emerald, Springer, Wiley. Taylor and Francis recently started to develop its own submission system. So in each, Elsevier has editorial manager, in their science, and IJI Global has their own submission system, and there are some other submission system. But the first thing, you need to go through journal and see what's the submission process, create your account, and there are clear steps for submission, so you can go through different steps for submission. Thank you, and I think I took a lot of time. Sorry, Prof. Okumus. I think this part will be taken over by Prof. Okumus, how to communicate with the editor.
Yes, Mustafa, great content. I have some notes about some of the things you said, just to add. There's one question, length of introduction. I think maximum it shouldn't be more than 3 pages. If it is more than 3 pages, I get tired. And yes, introduction, abstract, titles are all very attractive. We editors and reviewers look at those first, and they determine. Literature review, it's not trying to cite every previous research. It's all about the synthesis. What is the gap? What is your theory? What is your story? And how the theory has evolved over the years? Who found what? And then where we are now in showing the gap as well. And then in terms of methodology, you covered all main points, but what we are trying to show, if someone follows your footsteps in your methodology, either mixed mode or single method, let's say, whether we can reach the same conclusions, whether it's replicable, and then we can reach same or similar results. And these are the things. How to communicate with editors.
Thank you, Prof. Fevzi, to add this one. It's very important point.
I'm sure there are some great questions in the chat. Basically, as an editor, by the way, I said 617 submissions, 16 submissions as of today. During the session, we received another 3 submissions for the last hour. I get receiving emails. This is crazy. So I don't personally look at the cover letter, but sometimes I really look at if I don't understand the paper. So cover letters are important, but not the most important thing. And my assistant editors, associate editors, they look at the cover letter, and then I get emails. I like the emails to the point, not lengthy emails saying, I'm submitting this paper, this is the contribution, what do you think? Or can I submit this paper? And I get messages through LinkedIn, email, social media, Facebook, but sometimes it's getting really too much, getting emails from all social media accounts. And then the best way is to approach editors is conferences and seminars, workshops like this. I have met many editorial board members during conferences and many of our authors at conferences. So unfortunately, because of COVID, we don't have real face-to-face conferences, but conferences are the best to catch an editor and explain what your research is all about and how you can contribute. I think there are multiple ways, but messages be short. Your message should be short, crispy, and to the point, all right? And professional when you write to the editors. I get emails like yelling at me in a way, why the reviewers and myself have not responded to his paper, why we are still not giving the author's feedback. It's only 2 weeks, 3 weeks, okay? Even if we are late, if you send a nasty, rude email to me, I already have many things to handle, and I will not be happy with such an email. Yes, if we are late, I apologize, I work on it, but I don't like nasty, negative emails, period. Even if I reject your paper, don't send editors a nasty, yelling, cursing email. Just to the point, why you disagree with the reviewers and also with my decision. I may listen to you. Okay. So different ways to how to approach and communicate with the editor. What I want to talk about now, why your papers are rejected. Basically, what I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, rejections are part of our life, okay? Mustafa, it's not moving, okay. All right, one thing is, we have many journals in our field.
Is it okay now?
No, it's okay now, yes. For example, Tourism Management, Journal of Travel Research, and Annals of Tourism Research. They're very similar, but the way you position your paper is also very different. If you submit a paper to Journal of Travel Research, it's more quantitative oriented in many cases, okay? And Annals of Tourism Research, it's all about contribution to social sciences. And then if you submit something to Cornell, it used to be more applied practical implications. So think about the journal, how you position it. I think IJCHM and IJHM are very similar in a way, but still you have to show your theoretical contribution. So it's the so what question. It's all about, I see a lot of authors are very anxious, not patient enough. As soon as they finish their paper, they submit, rather than spending for another 2-3 weeks and fixing it, polishing it, and answering the so what question better. And yes, we work in teams, and then sometimes I write one section, the other authors write another section. At the end, one of us reads the whole paper, but sometimes sections do not connect well, okay? There is no flow in the paper, no connection. Literature review is okay, but methodology is not that well written. And then discussions don't refer to, as Mustafa said, the theory is the gap and so forth. So it's all about connecting all the sections and having a clear story and a flow. And in introduction, as Mustafa said, you have to highlight the gap, why we are doing this research. And you promise everything. You say, we are going to cure cancer with this paper. And at the end, when you read the discussion and conclusions, like, you promise everything, but I don't see anything here, any contribution. What is new here? Okay. So it's all about what you're delivering. And outdated literature review, yes. Outdated literature review. What we see is we finish our PhD or we do literature review. And then what happens is 2 years pass, we collect data, and we don't go back often and update the recent research, recent literature, especially with PhD thesis dissertations, I see that. So when you're submitting, add current references from reputable journals, top journals, not in hospitality and tourism, but in all sciences, okay? And major methodological problems are key. If I see one reviewer saying, I'm concerned about this methodology, I'm concerned about this analysis, concerned about with sampling, I ask my methodology editor to look at it. I ask my associate editor to look at it, because I have had some cases, it created a lot of issues, okay? Make sure your methodology is okay, is correct, is replicable, no issues, and so forth. And as I mentioned, I'm not a native speaker, and many of us are not native speakers. We write and try to publish in English, but make sure your article is readable, is well written, and is understandable, it's clear. If possible, work with an editor and so forth, right? You can ask colleagues as well. Never ask an editor to correct your paper, okay? Editors will not like that. I was asked to do that. I said, absolutely not, because it's not my paper. If I start doing it, I will not survive, okay? Not clear, I see it very often. It's an incredibly nice literature review, clear gap, okay? And then very strong methodology, robust, and findings are presented well, but authors fail to highlight their contribution, okay? Theoretical contribution, saying this study extends this theory in one area, two areas, second area, third area. Be specific, okay? And then be specific, saying why your study disagrees with the following studies, and then how it contributes. So this requires really some critical thinking, going for a walk, and then perhaps sleeping over the paper for a couple of days and looking at it. And also look at the best paper published recently and how your paper is different and better than that. When in my early career, I always looked at the best papers published in strategic management in my area. And then what I did, I said how I can write something better. And also, I need to highlight one thing. I publish in hospitality and tourism journals, but my main area is strategic management. Under strategic management is strategy implementation, was all about my PhD dissertation. So I read a lot about those areas: strategy implementation in strategic management, organizational behavior, change management, HR. I knew everything. So I could relate to the contribution of my study. And sometimes you need some friends to read your paper, give you feedback. And yes, in many areas, replication is common. Most of studies in hospitality and tourism, I will say, even other similar fields, marketing, strategic management, a lot of replication studies, which is fine. But if your replication study is not making any contribution, it finds the same thing. So what? Why are we publishing? Okay. So make sure if you're replicating, show you're extending in one area, second area, third area, and your methodology is different, your methodology is better, and so forth. And next one is plagiarism, including self-plagiarism. I'm getting a lot of issues with this, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you run your paper through Identicate. make sure you do not copy and paste sections from other studies, including your own. Give references fully. I tell you, even with my best friends, if I write papers, even with my PhD students, okay, what I do, I still run that paper. I trust them 100%, but I still run that paper through Identicate. Mustafa and myself and Dr. Shivani, we are working on two methodology textbooks or books, edited books. We are running each chapter through Identicate, make sure we don't get into these issues, okay? Yes, one more thing, we publish multiple papers from a single project, but make sure that they are not salami publishing, okay? So each paper is different and makes a unique contribution. It's not really a minor contribution. And also, we are all trying to tell stories. We are storytellers. What is your story? Okay, if you were to explain me your paper in 2 minutes, what is your contribution? This is the key here. And one more thing is, have not responded to the reviewers' comments. You know, to review a paper, I spend 2-3 hours. Some people spend half day, and then you totally ignore those comments, which is not really professional. So make sure you fully respond all the reviewers' comments, even if they are not 100% right. Professionally respond, and fail to follow author guidelines for the journal. This is key. It shows how professional you are, especially in the final stage. Really, editors don't have time to point out each issue one by one. There are some non-fatal errors like formatting issues, content misfit, long title, grammatical errors, spelling errors, missing references. I tell you, these are not important if you have only one. But if you have multiple of these, and I will say, the authors are not professional, okay? This is really key. And again, too many references, or few references, and putting your identity, making sure that, you know, the reviewers, editors know who you are. That's not good. And tables and figures are missing. And I get this, sending it to the wrong editor, journal. Like, I get this, like, we are submitting this paper. Dear Professor Rivera, we are submitting this paper to Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research. I'm like, I'm not Professor Rivera, and Professor Rivera is not the editor of the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So they're rushing, they're not doing their homework. Abstract is missing, different writing styles, and so forth. So do your homework, submit your paper 1 day later, 2 days later, 1 week later, but do your homework, okay? How to revise an article? Basically, this is if with IJCHM, and we have 40%, about 30-40% rejections, okay? That's one. If I give you a chance to revise, you have a chance that that paper will be accepted. Because if I feel that paper has no chance, I will reject it, either desk reject or after the first round of review. If I'm sending you a major revision email, work on it, make sure you respond. And follow the deadline. We often give extensions if needed, but not 3 months, not 6 months, 4 weeks, 6 weeks extension is fine. And basically, if you don't understand what the reviewers are saying, check with the editor, write a professional email, and work with your co-authors. And one person shouldn't do all the revision by herself, himself. And you can disagree. You can disagree with the reviewers, but be professional. Explain why and how you disagree. With one journal, for example, we submitted a paper, qualitative research, and the reviewer and the associate editor came back and said, this paper has no hypothesis and it has no value. And I wrote back and said, listen, as we mentioned, this is a qualitative paper. We did a lot of interviews. It has a robust methodology. Qualitative papers do not have hypotheses, okay? And the editor reversed her or his decision, and our paper eventually was accepted. So, but I was professional and highlighted where their assumptions, their justifications were not appropriate. And you can ask for an extension and point by point explain, okay, prepare the report professionally. If reviewers wrote 1 page or 2 pages, each reviewer, your revision at least response should be at least 2-3 pages. And describe how you responded to the point. And also, this is what I developed. Many journals use something similar. Left-hand side, what the reviewer is saying. Right-hand side, right column, you explain, refer to the page number, and then highlight. Just be specific, be clear, and also take your time. And also, if you send your paper for proofreading, also send your report for proofreading too. Okay, and we get 2-3 reviewers to each reviewer. So these are some examples, ladies and gentlemen, about. I often get similar comments, like the authors should explain and justify their sampling. Comments from the authors, done. All right, on the left, right-hand side here, done. Okay, is this appropriate? You need to justify why you use, which sampling you use. Let's say purpose of sampling, and then how you use it, why you used it, and who used it. Just explain it, how many people. And then another one is, paper fails to answer the so what question. Please discuss clearly implications, okay, of your study. Comment from the author, we have now answered the so what question, but where, in which pages, what is your so what justification? It's not enough. And then basically revising your article, try to do more than the reviewers have asked. Admit if the reviewers catch your errors, saying, I'm sorry, we are sorry, we missed that, thank you. If you can overcome these errors, limitations, explain. I tell you, if your paper is rejected from journal A, and you submit that paper without revising to another journal, either you will get similar comments or your paper may be sent to the same reviewer. Okay, I get a lot of reviews from journals related to strategic management. If I reject one paper in, from journal A, and then the same paper comes back to me 2 months later from another journal, the authors never revise their paper. Okay. And thank each reviewer, but don't overdo it. Like too much, sucking at all these, like you're the best reviewer, we appreciate. No need. Thank you very much. We explain, we understand, and so forth. Can you disagree with the reviewers? Absolutely, yes, you can. All right, this is another issue here. Never take revision of your paper lightly. Fevzi, this is an email from one of the reviewers. Fevzi, I put a lot of effort into the first review and feel the authors didn't address many of my initial issues. I have now spent an additional 4 or 5 hours and feel that the authors have not done their due diligence, reject. Okay, I'm really disappointed with the revised version of this paper. In fact, it is not any different and better than its earlier version. The authors have not responded to any of my suggestions. I suggest rejection, right? So make sure, like, we get angry, we are disappointed with our students because they don't do properly their homeworks, or you give them a chance to revise. And sometimes us professors behave the same way. So ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank for joining our session. We have a lot to cover. I see many questions. What I personally want to say, as I mentioned earlier, research is a journey, and you are never a perfect researcher. Okay, you will never write the best paper. As soon as you publish that best paper, 2 months later, when you read it, it will like, my God, I could have done something better. Okay, it's not, at that moment it was good. And again, you may think you know everything right now, but next year you will learn new things. So it is a journey, and the purpose is not to publish in SSCI journals. The purpose is to become a good researcher who can make a contribution to the field. develop new theories, find solutions, right? During this COVID, those scientists who found the vaccine, who have found medicine to cure the COVID, all right? They are the best. I admire them and pray for them, right? So what impact we are making in life? It's not, while our moderator, while he was introducing me, he said, oh, Professor Okumus has this number of papers, this number of citations, and so what, right? So it's the impact, my students, the industry, the teaching, the journal, the total picture, okay, or the package. Think about yourself and how you can become a good, outstanding scholar who publishes relevant, good papers in good journals, has good research students, PhD students, and good master students, undergraduate students. They work in the industry, in the field. They contribute to the society. And you work at a college, university, you serve on committees. You're a positive person, solve problems. I think it's the total package, I will say. I like controversial studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Fevzi. I think we'd like to thank you from Taylor's University on behalf of Center for Research Management and Center for Research and Innovation in Tourism, CRIT, such a wonderful sharing, so in depth. And I was just thinking, like, it's more like it's like an IKEA booklet. You have to see the instruction in order to, construct a good furniture. It's like constructing a good research paper. You have to follow the direction from the people who are already in this business. So thank you once again, both of you, for sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. I think that matters a lot, and also a lot of encouragement to the new researchers. And I think it's really helpful for all of us, and we are already in this social science. So thank you once again, Prof. We really admire your, the contribution you have made, and that's really matters. Thank you, Prof. Mustafa, as well. For the participant, we thank you for joining this session. I hope you all have enjoyed this session, and definitely we will share the recording of this session to all of you. So thank you and take care. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
Mustafa,
you.
it's great working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Have a good night.